Hey guys, how the hell are you? It is time for an all-new unbiased gear review, and it has been a long time since we have done an amp review. So let's just get right on into it. This is the Lichtlaerm Audio Promethus. But first, let's go over some specs of this unit. I'm not even going to pretend to tell you that, oh, I memorized this and that and the other. I know a few things about the amp, but there's just so much R&D that went into this beast, and so many subtle nuanced things and extra switches and this, that I can't sit here and rattle it all off from memory. So what I remember, I'll tell you, and what I need to, I'm going to actually check the website here and cheat a little bit. So first of all, this amp is 100 watt to 200 watt, depending on your choice of tubes that are contained herein. Taking a look in the back, I actually can't see what's written on the tube, but they are giant bottles, so I can only assume KT88s maybe. That would also explain why we have just such massive kill on command tone, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Two channels going on here. We have a clean channel with an independent EQ from the high gain channel, the lead channel as it's called here. We have a master volume, the control for the gate, which by the way is switchable right here as you can see. Presence and depth, that's the power amp section. Volume, bass, mid, treble, and gain. We also have a brilliant and warm switch for that clean channel. The high gain channel also has volume, bass, mid, treble, gain. There's also a couple switches on here that affect the tone a little bit differently as well. This vintage and modern switch that's on here, that's pretty self-explanatory. It engages a slightly different gain stage and gain structure when you flip it to the modern version, in my opinion, better. But that isn't to say that the vintage version of this amp isn't still extremely useful. You can get some downright awesome classic rock and classic metal tones out of it. But for my money, where it's at is that modern switch. There again, definitely getting ahead of myself. We also have a bite knob here. You flip it up and you get a little bit of extra treble boost in there, and you flip it down, you get a little bit more of a mid-range boost. And that mid boost that's on there is arguably a bit more responsive. You flip it down and you turn that mid knob and you get all sorts of crazy different frequency ranges and responses out of this thing. Very interesting to play with that, and every tone very usable. Very useful, if I do say so. One other thing that's really great, and this is kind of a proprietary thing for Lichtlaerm, you see this on a lot of their actual pedals, is this cut knob. And what this cut knob does is it basically shapes the low end pre-gain. Basically tightens up the signal that's going into the preamp a little bit. Turn it counterclockwise, it opens up that low end, you get a little bit more boom, but there again, doesn't really seem to be anything in there that's not at least somewhat useful. The switches that we've got over here, we've got a few different ones. We do have that gate switch that I was mentioning earlier, which I have switched on right now, as you can see, switched off and then back on. There's also a loop switch, so you can engage the loop from the front panel if you don't have the foot switch handy. There's also a store button that, just like how it would work on a few other amps, if you are using the MIDI function that's in the back of the amp, using an actual MIDI controller with this, you can basically store where you've got certain switches set on this amp. Finally, something else that's really cool, especially for dudes like me that have a lot of preamp pedals that they like to run in. How often is it that you're unplugging from the front of the amp and then plugging back into the effects loop return with a preamp pedal, going back and forth, trying to figure out what the best tone is? If you click on that defeat switch, that actually completely bypasses the preamp in this amp and just goes straight to the power amp. You can basically use this as a standalone power amp for that function too. Pretty cool, pretty interesting. We also have a 2-buffered effects loop, full MIDI control like I mentioned earlier, standard foot switch inputs, external bias points as well for whenever you actually service this beast. You've got a line out on the back. There's also some proprietary features of this head that are really, really cool. You can remove the chassis, use an adapter to basically make this thing rack mountable straight up after taking it out of the head shell. I love the fact that this has custom made pots and also custom made overwound transformers. This thing is handmade in Germany and has a variety of custom options available. One of the other things about this too, and I'm not about to actually sit here and weigh it, but this is an extremely lightweight head. And to make it even easier for lifting up, where they put the handles on this is something that, why the hell hasn't another amp manufacturer thought of this? The handles are on the sides and they're recessed. They've thought about a few things with this head that I wish a lot of other amp manufacturers thought of. But enough of talking about the features. Let's just go right into the tone demo. The first thing that we are going to do is we are going to hear this thing as it sounds by itself. I'm going to be using my Framus television that you know and love from several other videos. And immediately thereafter, we're going to go into a full song mix so that you can hear how this thing does. I quad tracked it, so I've got 2 sort of completely different tones that I'm blending together, and you're going to see what this thing actually does. overall, my final thought on this unit, man, where do I start? First off, Daniel has come up with a lot of great features and functions on this head that, honestly, I said it before, I'll say it again, I just really wish that a lot of other modern amp makers would actually implement into their own designs. There's been some serious R&D that has gone into this unit, and it shows. A lot of great proprietary functions. I still am in awe of the fact that the handles are on the sides like this. I think that is some great ergonomic thinking. But also, like, the main thing is the tone. One of the things that I think a lot of modern amp manufacturers really lack is character. I think that there's a lot of amp companies out there that are either A, they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, just kind of repackaging and retweaking, remodding circuits that we're already familiar with and to variant levels of success. Or we're getting these amps that, I don't want to name names, but we're getting a lot of amps from manufacturers these days that they cover the full frequency spectrum, and there's not any peaks or valleys, there's not any character. And what I've been bemoaning with modern high gain amp culture is I would love for something unique and original to come along that still has a little bit of character while still offering a little bit of that extra frequency bandwidth, so to speak. And here it fucking is. About goddamn time that someone came up with this, because there's not a bad tone to be found on that lead channel. Flick the knobs wherever, put the switches wherever, you are always going to find an extremely useful and awesome tone. Just depending on what setting you want to put it into. You want to do old school black metal, you want to do death metal, you want to do thrash, classic rock, bluesy rock. It does it. The most important thing is that there's still character there every step of the way. This sounds like an inspiring amp. Like all those old amps that we used to listen to on our favorite classic records back in the day. All those old Marshalls and Mesas and Peaveys and Ampegs and Randalls and whatever. They all had character. Some people would even say that maybe their tone, maybe their equalization was a little flawed because it wasn't covering everything. That's what was so great about them. That's been one of the things that I feel has been missing with modern high gain amp culture. And here we have someone who finally saw that, yeah, okay, you can have an amp that can fulfill all those needs, but you're not going to sacrifice any of the low end, any of the top end sizzle. You're not going to get this honky mid-range. You're not going to get this too even of a low mid that can easily get muddy and unusable. It's just a killer tone no matter where you set the knobs to. I mean, if that doesn't at least make you curious to check one of these things out, I don't know what to tell you. This might be the future of high gain amplification, if you ask me. But Arnold, what are you drinking today? I am so glad that you asked. I've been sitting on this for a minute, but about time we crack this open. This is a partnership of Three Floyds Brewing and Pig Destroyer. And this is Imperial Permanent Funeral IPA. It is 10.5% alcohol by volume. Wonder what they mean by permanent funeral, because technically aren't they all? Pretty hazy. That bodes well. I'm not the biggest fan of West Coast IPAs, so this does not look like a West Coast IPA. This looks a little bit more mountain or East Coast with how hazy it is. Lemongrass, grapefruit peel, a little bit of like a white bread note on the aroma too. Cheers. Oh! That's different, and in a very, very good way. Let's pour a little bit more of that in there. So that grassy and bready note come through loud and proud. That grapefruit peel note is a little bit more bitter in the flavor profile, which is kind of to be expected. It is an IPA after all. Also in the flavor, I'm getting this sort of like blood orange note that's kind of creeping in there just a little bit. Just something that's a little bit richer in the cheeks, but still very, very citrusy. That is, wow, that is a very, very interesting IPA. Imperial Permanent Funeral, partnership with Three Floyds and Pig Destroyer. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to this channel. There is tons more guitar and metal oriented content to come. And as always, remember, take what you do seriously. Do not take yourselves too seriously.